In the early 1950s, one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs of all time was unfolding, a discovery that would change our understanding of life itself. At the heart of this race was a molecule that carried the blueprint for every living thing. But behind the triumph of two celebrated scientists lay a story of controversy, overlooked contributions, and a scientist who never got the recognition she truly deserved. Hi, I'm KO, and today we're diving into the story of DNA's discovery, a tale of scientific ambition, competition, and an unsung hero whose work played a pivotal role but was largely ignored. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is the molecule that carries genetic information in every living organism. Think of it as a biological instruction manual containing the codes that determine traits like eye color, height, and even how our cells function. It's made up of two strands that twist into a shape called a double helix, like a spiraled ladder with steps made of chemical bases that pair up in a precise way. Molecule A with T and C with G. This simple yet elegant structure is the foundation of all life. But before the world knew what DNA looked like, scientists struggled to unlock its secrets. In the early 20th century, many believed that proteins, not DNA, carried genetic information. It wasn't until the 1940s that experiments by Oswald Avery, Colin MacLeod, and McLean McCarty demonstrated that DNA was the true genetic material. With this revelation, the race was on to determine DNA structure because knowing its shape could explain how it actually worked. Enter Rosalind Franklin, a brilliant but often overlooked researcher. Born in 1920 in London, Franklin excelled in science from a young age. She earned a PhD in chemistry from Cambridge University and became an expert in X-ray crystallography, a technique that uses X-ray to capture images of molecules at the atomic level. This skill would later make her one of the most crucial yet unrecognized figures in the discovery of DNA structure. In 1951, Franklin joined King's College London, where she was tasked with studying DNA. Using her expertise, she worked tirelessly to refine her X-ray techniques, capturing incredible detailed images of DNA fibers. One of these images, known as Photo 51, would become legendary. Taken in 1952, this image provided the clearest evidence yet that DNA had a helical structure, a spiraled shape much like a twisted ladder. At the same time, another scientist at King's College, Maurice Wilkins, was also studying DNA. However, he and Franklin had a strained professional relationship, largely due to misunderstandings and conflicting research approaches. Wilkins mistakenly believed Franklin was his assistant rather than an independent researcher, leading to a friction between them. Meanwhile, at Cambridge University, James Watson and Francis Crick were racing to solve the puzzle of DNA's shape. They had been working on theoretical models trying to piece together how DNA's components fit together. However, without solid experimental evidence, they struggled to confirm their ideas. That changed when, without Franklin's knowledge, Maurice Wilkins showed Photo 51 to Watson in early 1953. Upon seeing it, Watson instantly recognized its significance. The clear X-ray diffraction pattern provided the missing piece he and Crick needed to confirm that DNA was indeed a double helix. This revelation allowed them to refine their model and correctly position the bases in their now famous base pairing rule, where A always pairs with T and C always pairs with G. In April 1953, Watson and Crick published their findings in the journal Nature, describing the elegant double helix structure of DNA. In their paper, they made only a brief, vague reference to Franklin's work, failing to acknowledge the true extent of her contribution. The world celebrated Watson and Crick as scientific pioneers, while Franklin's role remained largely in the shadows. Tragically, Rosalind Franklin never knew the full impact of her work. She left King's College shortly after, moving to Birkbeck College, where she conducted groundbreaking research on viruses. Her work there laid the foundation for future discoveries in molecular biology, but before she could achieve more recognition, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. On April 16, 1958, at the age of just 37, Franklin passed away, never realizing that her research had helped solve one of the greatest scientific mysteries of all time. 4 years later, in 1962, Watson, Crick, and Wilkins were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discovery of the DNA's structure. Franklin was not included, and some argue that this was because the Nobel Prize is never awarded posthumously. Perhaps the question we should be asking is, would she have been recognized had she been alive? I'm going to quote Kanye on this one and say, I guess we'll never know. To make matters worse, in 1968, James Watson published his book The Double Helix, in which he described Franklin in a dismissive and patronizing manner, portraying her as difficult, stubborn, and oblivious to the significance of her own work. He even referred to her as Rosie, a nickname she never used. The book sparked outrage, especially among Franklin's colleagues who knew the true extent of her contributions. Over time, however, Franklin's legacy has been restored. Historians and scientists have worked to highlight her crucial role in DNA's discovery, and many institutions, awards, and research programs now bear her name. She is recognized as one of the most important figures in genetics, and her work continues to inspire scientists around the world. Let's take a minute to understand the impact of discovering the DNA structure. Understanding DNA structure was not just a scientific curiosity. It transformed medicine, genetics, and even forensic science. Today, DNA research has led to genetic engineering, where scientists can modify DNA to treat genetic disorders, create genetically modified crops, and develop new medical treatments. In forensic science, DNA fingerprinting revolutionized crime solving, allowing law enforcement to identify criminals and exonerate the innocent. Last but not least, let's talk personalized medicine. By understanding how genes influence diseases, doctors can now develop tailored treatments for individuals. All of these advancements trace back to the discovery of the double helix, a breakthrough made possible in part by Franklin's Photo 51. Rosalind Franklin's story serves as a powerful reminder that science, like history, is not always fair. While Watson and Crick built a model that would change the world, Franklin's data provided the proof they needed, yet she was never properly credited during her lifetime. But today, her story is widely recognized. More than just a footnote in history, Franklin is celebrated as one of the greatest scientific minds of the 20th century. She may not have received the Nobel Prize, but her work laid the foundation for discoveries that have shaped modern science and medicine. So the next time you hear about DNA, remember that behind Watson and Crick's famous double helix was a brilliant scientist whose contributions should never be forgotten. And that brilliant scientist is Dr. Rosalind Franklin. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Double Helix, coded to reality.